What's happening, everybody? Welcome to our first episode of Breakouts here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Besbris at Dan Besbris on Twitter, DanBesbris. It's right there on the screen for those of you watching along. And this is presented by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook, a proud partner of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball and the Believe Network as we continue to grow and legitimize our offering here on Old Man Squad. Please take a moment to like now, pause for dramatic effect, and subscribe. That's the big one. We need subscriptions. That's how we continue to grow this monster. It has been a fun little uptick here over the last week or so. I feel like people are starting to pay attention to fantasy basketball for the first time in a while. Yesterday was our biggest subscriber growth day leading up to this campaign so far this year. Let's see if we can top it out today. Breakout players. What the hell does that even mean? What does it even mean, breakout players? So it means different things to different people. But for our purposes, we have to define it by something here on the show. Otherwise, without criteria, we have nothing. What separates us from the animals without criteria for what a breakout player is? We're going to use the Yahoo Rank Board version 2.0. That's what they put out on September 9th. And my assessment of what a breakout player is a player set to take a big jump forward when compared to their pre-rank or their ADP. And it's not a player inside the top 25. So basically, you have to be able to get some kind of return on your investment with this player, which is hard to do if you're already drafting them early. And also, like, there's an expectation that those players are going to break out if you're spending a top 20-something pick on them. And interestingly, on the current Yahoo board, I didn't really find any younger-ish guys inside the top 45 to put on this list. There are some old guys inside the top 50 that I think have potential for what you'd call kind of a breakout campaign. But the problem is that when we hear the word breakout, the thing our brain goes to is someone who hadn't broken out in the past already. So that took those old guys off the board for me. I didn't think they fit the criteria. That is your preamble. Let's dive in. Deni Avdia at number 54 is the first name on our board we're going to talk about today, a potential for a breakout that we actually saw inklings, more than inklings, it was actually quite a bit more than inklings of at the end of last year when the Blazers basically handed him the keys to the team. Remember, down the stretch last season, over the final 2 months of the year, 20 to 25 games, somewhere in that neck of the woods, Avdia was a top 50 player. He was number 44 during that stretch on averages of 23 points, 2.5 threes, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and 51-78 splits with relatively high turnovers, but you figure a guy handling the ball a lot. Turnovers have always been a little bit of a problem for Denny, and you'd hope that over time those would maybe, I don't know, say necessarily go down, but the assist-to-turnover ratio you hope would go down. But the fun little news on that is Anthony Simons was still playing during most of that stretch. If you look at the very end of the year, so like the last 3 weeks or so, Simons got shut down for about half of that, and Avdia was only shut down for like a third of that. Actually, I think he got hurt for real during that stretch. And during that time, when Denny was pretty much alone, it was Denny and Shaedon Sharpe versus the universe, he was number 24 in fantasy basketball, despite, again, the painfully high number of turnovers. He was at 4 turnovers a game during that stretch. He was actually number 12 in 8-cat. What does that mean? Do I think Denny's going to be a top 25 guy this year? I don't, because yes, Simons is gone, but Jeremy Grant is, at least at the beginning of the year, going to start the season healthy. So there's going to be somebody there to screw up the beautiful utopia in our mind of them just giving Avdia the basketball and letting things happen. Shaedon Sharpe is there as well, but again, those two guys were able to do this stuff as kind of like the 1 and the 2. But with Grant in, that wedges one of them, not necessarily to the 3, but like kind of a 3-headed monster near the top. But we all know the Jeremy Grant story. He doesn't stay healthy for more than 4 weeks at a time. That's kind of the upper limit for the most part. So there are going to be, I would think, a lot of them, stretches this year where Avdia is the number one. And he might even open the season as the number one. But what we're talking about is when there really isn't a three. We've seen it so many times over the years. When a team gets a big three, someone gets squeezed a little bit. When there's a big two, they seem to be just fine. So we need the Blazers to be trimmed down to more of a big two. And I get it. Other guys are going to do stuff. Scoot's going to do some stuff, and Holiday's going to do some stuff probably, and so on and so forth. But it feels like, specifically in 8-cat, Deni Avdia should be a top 50 guy. Over the second half of last year, he was top 50 in 8-cat. So there really isn't that big of a jump that needs to happen there. And as we've already talked about, the high turnovers, like he was a second rounder over the season's final 25 games. He was a first rounder in 8-cat over the season's final 15 games. The pathway for Avdia to be a big-time breakout guy is laid out before us. The only downside I see right now is that he opened at number 62 on the first Yahoo board. We didn't have a chance to do a breakout show on that one before they updated it. He's up to number 54 now, and so that trims 2/3 of a round of value off of him. But I'll say this. If you are punting turnovers on either side of the equation, I think some of you guys listen to my show and you don't fully understand what punting means, but that's okay. We're not going to do a long side panel on that. You can either be not worried about it because you don't care if you lose it, or you might be not worried about turnovers for this one pick because let's say you started with Shea in the first round, who's kind of your low turnover early round pick. Most of the other guys at the beginning of the first round are 3 to 3.5 turnovers a game. You might have a little bit of wiggle room to take a guy like Avdia in the 5th round, who's going to be a 3+ turnover per game guy. But if your team was on the low side already, then it's almost like you flip it. Instead of getting your high turnover guy in the 1st or 2nd round, you get him in the 5th round. No big deal, as they say. So I like Avdia as our first potential breakout guy. Austin Reaves is the next one on the list. By the way, we're going to talk about 7 names on today's show. I probably should have told you that at the outset. It's probably going to be in the thumbnail and or the title of the program, but whatever. We're talking about 7 guys. Austin Reaves, much like Deni Avdia, has given us an indication of what he can be, and he did a lot of it late last year. I don't understand Austin Reaves having a pre-rank of 59 in any universe. He was number 39 last year, playing with a mostly healthy LeBron James, and there was like a 3-week-ish stretch after the Anthony Davis-Luka Doncic trade where it was just Reeves and LeBron. But really, once D'Angelo Russell was gone, Austin Reaves was a monster. The whole second half of last year, D'Lo was out of there. Reeves played, I think, all 41 games the second half. I don't think he missed a single game the second half of the season for the Lakers. So that's, check mark in one of the boxes we love to check. And he averaged 22, 4.5 boards, 5.5 assists, 1.2 steals, almost 3 threes on 48-91 splits, which was good enough for turn. He was valued on the turn in 9-cat. That's wild. The Lakers had 3 guys in 9-cat ranked inside the top 20 in fantasy the second half of last year. Luka was 12, Reeves was 13, LeBron was 19. That order flip-flops a bit if you go 8-cat, then it's Luka at 6, LeBron 9, Reeves 17. But who cares? Either way, we're talking about 3 guys ranked inside the second round. 8 or 9-cat. And here's Austin Reeves with a pre-rank at the end of the 5th round. And you're like, oh, Dan, I'm worried about what Luka Doncic usage is going to do to Reeves. Austin's best numbers came with Luka going full Luka. Austin shot 52% once he and Luka were playing consistently next to one another. No, I don't think he's going to be top 15 like he was down the stretch. Lakers were playing all of their guys 36 minutes a night. They were making a hard push to try to avoid the play-in tournament. In all likelihood, 34, 35 minutes is more the target for those guys. They'd probably like to keep Reeves more in 34. LeBron, I think they'd probably like to get even lower. Luka's not going to play less than 34 or 35 because he just won't allow it. But whatever. 36 goes to 34 for Austin Reaves. You don't take that much off the top. And yeah, DeAndre Ayton came in, so they're going to have to funnel a little bit more to a big man than they did this last year. I don't see that being a problem. Reeves, to me, is a third rounder almost with his eyes closed in 9-cat because he's so damn efficient while he's doing, like, the percentages being great is really just the gravy for this dude. And it's strange for me to even call it a breakout because it feels like the breakout already happened, but he hasn't been priced as if it already happened. So Austin Reeves, I'd be willing to draft in the 4th round if I had to. I shouldn't say that out loud because he'll probably start going even earlier than he already is. Most drafts we're seeing right now with people that are paying close attention to fantasy in early September, which are more the upper intermediate through expert range of humans, he is going in the late 30s and 40s and not the 50s. I am very curious to see where he goes when we get into the more public drafts during fantasy season, but right now on the pre-rank board, he's a crazy steal. A repeat offender from last year, Mark Williams, is on the breakout board. And I'll say this. Look, he was hurt most of last year. Yeah, but we knew that going into the equation. Once he came back, Mark Williams was awesome. Awesome. Over his final 30 games, which is basically when he got healthy, because it took him about 10 to 15 to kind of get his legs underneath him, Mark was number 28 in 9-cat. He has injury issues from here to the moon. I cannot deny that. But he's currently being ranked as an 8th rounder with 3rd round upside. And I'll say it again. An 8th rounder with 3rd round upside. He was consistently, night in and night out, top 35 or better once he was playing 28, 29 minutes a game. He's a high percentages big man, which is awesome. You guys know I love me some high percentages guy. Both field goal and free throw. He blocks some shots. He's not amazing at shot blocking, but he's just gigantic. So he got 1.4 blocks a game once he was in the 28, 29 minutes range. That's a great number, 1.3, 1.4. He actually got about 0.7, 0.8 steals on top of it, so that's good. And believe it or not, he's actually a pretty good passing big man. He'll get you pretty close to 2.5, 3 assists a game when he's out there that long. And we know he's going to rebound because he's on a Phoenix team that doesn't really have any other rebounding. Devin Booker's small. Jalen Green is small. Dylan Brooks doesn't rebound much, even if he's sort of a stout fellow. Mark Williams is going to get his 10, maybe even 11 rebounds a night. Which makes me able to say the following. I don't even really care if he gets banged up this year and misses some time. He's so elite in 9-cat that it doesn't matter. Mark Williams last year by totals, guys, this is where things get really almost like comedic because remember, he missed half the season last year and by totals, he was still a 10th rounder, missing half the season. He could have played in like 4 more games and he would have been an 8th rounder. And that's missing, I think he missed the first 30 games of the year last year. Most of the games he missed came in one long chunk to open the year. I'll try to pull it up quickly while we're talking about it. But Mark Williams, like, once he came back, yeah, Charlotte was going to rest him in back-to-backs because they had absolutely nothing to push him for. So those were going to be on the docket. But, like, he didn't play his first game last year until December. He missed October. He missed November. He was in the 10 to 20-minute range basically until the new year. He wasn't really playing basketball until January. I mean, I know he played 6-7 games in December, but like, did he really play them? All that to say, you know, the 20 some odd games he missed to open the year, that was the bulk of it. This season, so last year, he went into the year basically with a maximum number of games played of about 62. That was going to be the max. And yeah, he missed another 18 because there were like 8 to 9 back-to-backs that he sat out. And then just other stuff. But he's on a team now that's going to be trying for at least the first 4 months of the year. I don't know what that's going to mean for the end of the road for Phoenix. And they want to give him a fresh start. No, they went out and they got him at a bargain price, by the way. They went out and they got him. So Phoenix is going to run this dude out there, and they're going to see what they've got. And Mark is going to show them he's a hell of a fantasy player. So Mark Williams in the 8th round is a wild one. Payton Pritchard also in the 8th round. He's another guy that in these expert drafts is not falling as far as the 8th round, but might once we get around to the more public part of the season, provided he doesn't move all that much in what he's doing. And there's been, and I see the comments, by the way. There's one guy in the comments that keeps yelling about how the Celtics are going to tank the season away. I'm not disagreeing with you that the smart thing for the Celtics to do would be to tank the season away. I just think that because the East is such garbage, people forget how good the Celtics can be with the other pieces. Like, it doesn't seem like they should be good, but Derek White is excellent. Jaylen Brown is solid. Payton Pritchard was amazing last year. And they're going to just accidentally win 30-some-odd games without even intending to. And Pritchard is going to be a guy. He played 80 out of 82 games last year, even on a team that, like, they didn't need to play everybody all season long. This is a guy who's going to want to go out and sort of get his. I don't know that Payton Pritchard is necessarily immune to the weirdness that may or may not happen with the Celtics this year, but of the guys that are getting drafted on this team consistently, he's the most immune to it. I'm just not as worried about shutdowns. I think they're going to get rest days in the middle of the season. You'll see Jaylen Brown sit out some back-to-backs. You'll see Derek White sit out some back-to-backs. I don't know that Pritchard is going to have to sit them out. He might. He might not. And then, the other thing that was in the comment section was, like, these guys are not going to play in your fantasy playoffs. You think they're going to shut them down 6 weeks early? I don't think Payton Pritchard gets shut down at the end of February. That's way early. The biggest issue this past season wasn't stars missing fantasy playoff games. It was good players just not playing throughout the season. Brooklyn, Utah, teams like that just decided they didn't want to play their guys. The fantasy playoffs were basically the same that they'd always been. Guys mostly played. Little injuries took guys out. The Celtics rested guys during the fantasy playoffs this last year because they were so far ahead of the third-place team in the Eastern Conference. It can be on either side. There's no one that's immune to it these days. So if you see an amazing value like a Payton Pritchard, I think you have to jump on it. He was number 45 by totals last year, which is awesome because of the durability stuff. He was number 79 by averages last year. And he's likely to see a pretty good size uptick in what he's being asked to do. So instead of 10.8 shots per game, you can probably pencil him in for a dozen. Probably more assists, I would think. Ball handling work. Tatum was the leading assist guy on the Celtics. That's not nothing. Drew Holiday was like 4th in that department. We always talk about how many shots got sent out with Tatum, Porzingis, and Holiday going out and Anthony Simons coming in. We haven't talked that much about the assists side of it. Simons is going to take care of some of that, but he might be coming off the bench. So I would expect Payton Pritchard to see a few more points this year, more threes, more assists, more playing time probably, and just like generally positives across the board. Every little bit extra he gets to do is a nice extra feather in his cap. I think Payton Pritchard has a chance to be a top 50 guy this season. Put him on the list. Put him on the list. What did I say the Celtics season win total was before we get to Donovan Clingan? 40.5. Yeah, I mean, that is a bit on the high side. I still think they squeak over that mark, but I mean, maybe that's the Celtics premium hard at work. Either way. That's what FanDuel's got it at, 40.5. Right now, there's a little bit of juice on the over with FanDuel's 40.5 mark, but doesn't matter. Let's keep talking about breakouts. That's the more fun stuff right now. Donovan Clingan, one of 2 Blazers we're going to talk about here who's getting drafted in the 100 to 110 range. And we'll start with Donovan, who, again, you'll notice, and Payton Pritchard is not one of them, but a lot of the guys that we're talking about on this breakout show today are guys that showed us glimpses of what we want for this year at the end of last year. It's actually heavy on Blazers. We already talked Deni Avdia, who was, like I said, a first rounder in 8-cat down the stretch last year. Donovan Clingan was top 75 in 9-cat down the stretch last year. And every passing week, he got better because every passing week, the Blazers heaped a few extra, not even minutes, but seconds onto him. Over the final 2 months last year, Donovan Clingan was ranked right around top 100 in 25 minutes a game. And mind you, the reason he wasn't higher is because of the 53% free throw shooting, which, smaller sample size stuff that tends to be kind of a bigger deal. But he averaged 8 points, 10 boards, and 2.5 defensive stats over the final 2 months. That's good enough by itself. That was in 25 minutes a game. Over the final 1 month, his minutes were up to 27, and he averaged 8.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, still 2.5 defensive stats, and he was top 75, despite field goal percent actually going down a little bit. Again, this is what the sample size stuff means. Over the final 3 weeks, because final month was about 14 games, 3 weeks was about the final 10 games, he got up to 28 minutes a game, and he was at 9.2 points, 10.7 rebounds, 2.7 defensive stats combined. You guys are seeing a trend here. Over his final 7 games, he played now a full 28 minutes, because actually 27 minutes and about 45 seconds for the 3 weeks. And he was at 10.3 points, 11.7 rebounds, 2.7 defensive stats, and he was top 60 over that stretch. Now, there's a little bit of a cap on how breakouty Donovan Clingan can be, because he's a big man who's going to rely on someone else to get him shots. My hope is that he gets 28 minutes a game right out of the chute. Because if he does, he's going to be around 9 to 11 points. He's going to be around 10 to 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2.5 probably defensive stats. I also have this fleeting hope that he's going to get a little better at field goal percent from, 51, 52 to like 54 or 55. I don't know that's going to be the case, but I'm hoping. And then I'm also hoping that free throw is, mid 50s instead of low 50s, but it's going to be bad either way. The upper cap here for Clingan is, unless he plays like 32 minutes a game, these numbers are not going to change all that much. We've sort of seen what he could be. Now, he's a woolly mammoth, so they probably don't want to play him 32 minutes a game, but there might be days where he gets 32 minutes. And you just hope that that averages out with the 26-minute nights and maybe gets him up around 29 this year. Not out of the question. And every little bit pushes him a little bit higher, because his fantasy value is just simply tied to how long he's out on the court, because he's not a usage guy. He can't get his quickly because he's not going to go out there and take a bunch of shots. He needs to be out there for a long haul. He needs to be out there for 7 to 8 minutes every quarter, 7 to 8 minutes every quarter, so that he can get his 10-plus rebounds and his 2.5 defensive stats and his 2 assists just from living out there. And frankly, his scoring, because a lot of it's going to be putbacks and pick and roll stuff and where he's the roll man, and they're not going to feature him. So he's not my favorite breakout guy in the 100 range, because I think the ceiling for him is probably 55, 60. But I like the fact that it's only going to take 24, 25 minutes a game to get him to his ADP. So it feels like he's a pretty good winner, even if maybe he doesn't perfectly fit the breakout mold. And finally, our third damn Blazer on today's show, Toumani Camara. Now, the Kamara thing is a little bit of a different set of analyses than the Donovan Clingan thing, because we saw Toumani be good for long stretches last year. So he doesn't need, there wasn't like this one little bit at the end of the year where we're like, oh, no, look at that. Like the Wolf of Wall Street meme where Leonardo's leaning back and he's pointing at the thing. That's what we did with Clingan at the end of the year and Avdia at the end of the year. And who the crap else did we have on this thing? And I guess sort of Austin Reeves, but not really. Reeves post-Luka trade, not end of the year necessarily. Kamara is a different monster in that he's just a boring fantasy stat set guy. So he gets passed over despite being potentially very valuable in 9-category leagues. Much like Clingan, he's a lower turnovers guy, so he's going to be less enticing in points leagues and 8-cat formats. But there was a 2 to 3 month stretch during the middle of last year where Kamara was a top 50 fantasy player, which is like, what? How the hell did that happen? Well, he was at 1.6 steals a game during that stretch. This is basically like from mid-January on. 14 points, 2.5 threes, 6 boards, 3 assists, good defensive stats, good field goal percent. Not really a great foul shooter, interestingly, but we're not overly concerned with that. And I think we're going to get more. You have to remember that Kamara was still a really young basketball player this past year. And he came on and he became this invaluable defensive menace role player, but he doesn't have to stay that role player. Now, he's older than some because he was already, I think, 22 or 23 when he got drafted a couple years ago. So, yeah, he hasn't been in the NBA for very long, but he's already made some of his I'm not a little kid strides. What he hasn't fully made yet is things that just being around the NBA and around NBA coaches and stuff like that, those things that can improve his game. His three-point shooting got a lot better this last year. He's a guy that is going to slowly grow into a little bit more offense. And frankly, we kind of saw that over the course of the year. He was taking 11.5 shots a game down the stretch after more like 8 for the first half of the year. And that was just because guys went down. And so he was like, all right, I get to do a little bit more. And that's what's happened now. Anthony Simons went out. They sent out a 17 shot per game guy, and they didn't bring anybody back. That's a high usage guy. They brought back Drew Holiday. He's a low usage guard. Shaedon Sharpe, Deni Avdia, those guys, and Jeremy Grant, those guys are going to be your lead dogs. But those guys were all getting a bunch of stuff last year, and Kamara still found a way inside the top 100. Take out one of those 4 dudes, not to say that Toumani is going to be like the new 4th guy going and getting 13, 14 shots a game, but 11, 12 instead of 8 is very reasonable because we did see it a little bit. So give me a guy getting you over 2 defensive stats a game, and give me a guy getting close to 3 threes and 15, 5, and 3 or whatever from the field or from the popcorn stats. And you got Kamara, who has legitimate top 70 9-cat potential. And he, unlike some of the other guys, is not going that much earlier than his pre-rank, even in the expert drafts. I love Kamara as a 3-and-D type guy in this range who has a little bit of upside even beyond just the 3-and-D. I didn't pick a very good picture, did I? Doesn't matter. So go and get him. And finally, and to me, this is more of a like first flyer as opposed to traditional breakout name, and that's Ausar Thompson, who we did see a little bit of the outlines of it down the stretch last year when Tobias Harris missed a few games. Not many. Tobias doesn't miss that many basketball games, but we started to see Ausar Thompson's minutes creep up. For the whole season, he was, what was the entire year? Full season, Thompson was 22.5 minutes per game. He was ranked 130th. Over the final 2 months, he was at 24.5, and he was number 97. Over the final 1 month, he was at 25 minutes a game. He was number 92. Over the final 3 weeks, he actually played 29 minutes a game. That was when half the games were without Tobias Harris, who, by the way, is back. So is Jaden Ivey. So, the path didn't exactly get more open, although Malik Beasley is still unsigned after all the weird stuff, and they traded Tim Hardaway Jr., but they brought in Duncan Robinson and blah, 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 blah. It feels like there's a path for Ausar Thompson to get more than 25 minutes a game. And he is among the truly hyper-elite defensive stat guys in the NBA. In 29 minutes a game down the stretch last year, he averaged 3 combined defensive stats. And it's not fluky. because in 25 minutes a game, he was at 2.5 defensive stats a game. In 24 minutes, he was at 2.5 defensive stats a game. So cranking him up to 29 minutes shouldn't be all that surprising that he went up to about 3 defensive stats a game. He's a decent field goal percent guy. He's a bad foul shooter. I don't think that stuff is going anywhere. He's a pretty good rebounder who's not going to score very much. He's not the same fantasy player as his brother. He is more, they both are very good on defense, but Ausar Thompson is more the rebounder of the two. Amen Thompson is more a passer. Not that either one can be sort of pigeonholed into one of those things. They're much more than that. But this has to be the year, doesn't it? I mean, that's a weird question to ask in sort of a rhetorical fashion, but this has to be the year that they cut him loose a little bit. It has to. The Pistons are going to have floor spacing issues, losing their 2 best three-point shooters, at least for now, that's the way it is. That's going to mean that Duncan Robinson is going to have to play because they need, like, you can't have all 5 guys inside the three-point line. And that's going to be one of the things that limits how much Ausar Thompson can actually be on the court. But he is going to rapidly become one of their most pivotal players because of all the things that he can do. They're going to have to find ways to get him out there. So as your first flyer, take Ausar Thompson. Is he what you'd call a traditional breakout guy? I honestly don't know. But he sure as crap has the ability to be that guy. Because if you get him up to 28 minutes a ball game, Ausar Thompson is probably a top 50 guy. Getting drafted near 110. So sure, call him a damn breakout guy. I don't know that the odds are as great for him to wallop his ADP as some of the other names we've talked about on today's show. There's probably more potential downside here. Not downside, that's the wrong word. There is potential for him not to be a win, whereas some of the other guys can sort of blindfolded make their way to be a small win at least. But man, if things click for Thompson, this could be a whopper. And that's it for the breakout guys. However, those of you that stayed till the end of the program, please like and subscribe, by the way, before I get to this very last page. There are some exciting old dudes that I liked a lot, but could not classify as a breakout. And those guys are Steph Curry at 27 and Kevin Durant at 31. I know they're old. I just said it. But Steph was number 9 last year. Kevin Durant was number 11 last year. Steph was getting better as the year went on. He was a top 6 guy the second half of last season. KD's going to a place where I think he's going to do more in Houston than he did in Phoenix. These guys, in my mind, are top 15 shoo-ins. KD is probably a top 10 fantasy player this year. Steph might be a top 10 fantasy player this year. Going in the 3rd round, we've done this math before. On a per-game side, like for games cap format, these guys are the absolute no-brainers of the century. For unlimited games leagues, we've done the math. We've done the math. How many games are you worried that they're going to miss? Because Kevin Durant missed 20 games last year. He was still number 25 by totals. You think he can get to 62 games this year? I do. That makes him a win. Steph Curry was number 8 by totals last year. You think he can only miss 12 games? I don't care. What if he missed 14? Still an easy win. These guys are easy wins in my book, unless they have something that knocks him out for 30 ball games. They are easy wins. I can't call them breakouts because they're in their late 30s. They're not breaking out. They're going too early for me to say, oh, these guys are like going to be a breakout. But to me, they're some of the best ADP beaters in the early parts, even if they're not young guys. So thank you for sticking around to the end. That was your bonus at the end of the program. Please remember, it says it right on the screen for YouTubers, but I'm going to yell it in your ear, podcast friends. Subscribe, please, for the love of all that is holy. Subscribe to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. You're going to get stuff from me. You're going to get stuff from Adam King. You're going to get stuff from Noah Rubin. You're going to get stuff from Matty G. You're going to get stuff from Eric Ong. The Thriller from Manila. The legend himself is putting together some amazing stuff. And then some here on this channel. It's a very populated YouTube feed this year, and I'm super excited about it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for rating and reviewing. Thank you for finding me over on social media. Again, that's at Dan Besbris. I haven't gotten around to posting as much on Twitter so far as I'd like to. I've said it before. It's because my wife is out of town. We have a nanny gap. There's a 3-week gap between nannies. So I am on perma childcare, and I just have time to get stuff done when the kids are at school right now. And even that is by the skin of my teeth. But the Twitter stuff is coming, I promise. Old Man Squad is also the feed there if you want to get everything. Thanks again, guys. I'm Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad and FanDuel and the Believe Network. I'll see you guys real soon.